For centuries, the Draconis whispered stories of the ghosts of Terra, ancient beings of immense power who vanished from the galaxy. Phoebe, a young Draconis mechanic, dismissed them as nothing more than campfire tales until the censors screamed. Her workshop, usually a haven of organized chaos, was filled with the low hum of energy conduits and the rhythmic clatter of her multi-jointed manipulators against durasteel. Today, she wrestled with a recalcitrant sensor drone, its casing cracked and internals exposed like a dissected insect. "Just a little more juice and you'll be seeing the stars again," she muttered, her voice barely audible over the thrum of the gravity generator. Ghosts of Terra, just stories to scare young hatchlings. Then it happened. A piercing shriek erupted from the repaired sensor drone, instantly overriding the ambient noise of the workshop. Red emergency lights strobed violently, painting the cluttered space in a pulsating crimson. Tools clattered to the floor, forgot. Phoebe recoiled, her 4 eyes wide with alarm, the fine scales on her face prickling with adrenaline. She scrambled to the console, her fingers flying across the activation runes. The sensor readings scrolled across the screen. Dozens of unknown vessels were approaching the Draconis homeworld, their velocity defying known physics. The numbers swam before her eyes. Impossible. News of the approaching fleet spread like wildfire through the Draconis Council chambers. Elder Counselor Valerius, his face etched with concern, addressed the assembled members. "The sensor readings are confirmed. An unidentified fleet is approaching our system." Whispers rippled through the chamber, some uttering the forbidden name, Ghosts of Terra. The Council, galvanized by the threat, issued a system-wide alert. Defense platforms powered up, their energy shields shimmering into existence. The Draconis fleet, a formidable armada of sleek warships, mobilized, forming a defensive perimeter around their jewel of a homeworld. Back in her workshop, Phoebe stared at the sensor data, a knot forming in her stomach. The fleet's technology was unlike anything she had ever encountered. Ancient, almost archaic in design, yet possessing capabilities that surpassed even the most advanced Draconis warships, a paradox that defied explanation. The Draconis Council attempted to hail the approaching vessels, broadcasting a series of encrypted messages in the standard galactic languages. Silence. Only static and garbled noise answered their calls. Frustration and apprehension grew with each failed attempt. Panic began to grip the Draconis homeworld. Citizens flooded the streets, their faces a mixture of fear and confusion. Emergency broadcasts blared from every comm screen, urging calm and obedience. During the chaos, a high-ranking member of the Draconis Council approached Phoebe with a desperate plea. "Technician, we have intercepted fragments of their transmissions. There's an archaic language long forgotten. It may be the key to understanding them. We need you to decipher it." Phoebe dove into the task, analyzing the garbled signals with a fervor she didn't know she possessed. Hours blurred into a frantic search for meaning. Then, a breakthrough. She isolated repeating phonemes, linguistic fossils from a bygone era, fragments of what appeared to be a primitive version of English. The Ghosts of Terra theory was gaining terrifying traction. The Draconis defense fleet, filled with weapons, moved to intercept the approaching ships. "Unidentified vessels, you are in violation of Draconis space. Identify yourselves and state your intentions, or we will be forced to open fire." The message echoed across the void, a desperate plea for communication. The human ships remained silent. Then, defying all expectations, a lone vessel broke formation, accelerating towards the Draconis homeworld. Fear turned to dread, anticipation to paralyzing terror. On Phoebe's console, the lead ship purposed into a clearer image. Prominently displayed on its hull was a symbol she recognized from the ancient texts, an ancient Terran emblem, a circle encompassing a stylized representation of a united Earth, a symbol from the Ghost Stories. Light years away, on the bridge of that lead ship, Admiral Jacob Wilson stared out at the approaching planet, his face a mask of relentless drive. He contemplated the choice he had to make, the words he had to speak, and the history he had to reveal to a people who might never understand the burden humanity carried. Crimson lights pulsed across the Draconis flagship Valiant, bathing the bridge in an ominous glow. On the main view screen, the lone human vessel, a dagger-shaped silhouette against the starfield, continued its inexorable approach. "Target lock confirmed," barked Commander Ryla, her voice tight with controlled aggression. "Weapons primed. Awaiting your order, Counselor." Counselor Iridian, his scales shimmering with a nervous energy, hesitated. "Hold your fire, Commander. Let us not be hasty. These humans may yet offer an explanation." On the bridge of the human vessel, Admiral Wilson watched the Valiant with a grim expression. "Helm, bring us to a full stop. All power to communication arrays. Let's show them we're not here for a fight, even if they think we are." He sighed, the weight of his responsibility pressing down on him. Back on the Draconis homeworld, Phoebe's fingers flew across her console, a chaotic symphony of clicks and whirs filling her small workshop. Sweat beaded on her brow as she wrestled with the alien signal, a jumbled mess of sound and static. Suddenly, a flicker of recognition, a linguistic root buried deep within the archaic Draconis lexicon. I think I have something," she gasped, isolating a string of phonemes. The Valiant's comm system crackled to life. A distorted but recognizable Draconis greeting echoed across the void. "Human vessel, you are in violation of Draconis space. State your intentions." The council chamber on Draconis Prime was a swirling vortex of anxiety. Holographic projections flickered, displaying sensor readings, linguistic analyses, and strategic assessments. "They have responded," Counselor Lyra announced, her voice tinged with cautious optimism. "Establish a secure, limited-bandwidth communication channel, but maintain full combat readiness." On the human vessel, Wilson's face was etched with frustration. "They're using... What is that? It's like a dialect from before the Great Schism." He cleared his throat, adjusting his vocal modulator. "Draconis vessel, this is Admiral Jacob Wilson of the Terran Flotilla. We come in peace, though perhaps not in the way you understand it." The archaic English felt clumsy, inadequate. "Peace?" Counselor Iridian's voice dripped with skepticism. "Your fleet appears on our doorstep unannounced, uninvited. What peace is this?" Wilson hesitated. The truth was a tangled web of ancient history, galactic war, and a threat so immense it could shatter civilizations. "We bring warning. A shadow stirs in the void, a danger to us all." He offered a limited explanation, carefully omitting the details that could incite panic. "We seek only to share information, to offer assistance." Flashback. A younger Wilson, his face hardened by years of war, stared out at a burning planet. The sky was a maelstrom of fire and ash. The screams of the dying echoed in his ears. "There was no other choice," he muttered, the words tasting like ash. "We had to stop them." Back in her workshop, Phoebe's eyes widened. The human language. It contained echoes of a language she'd only read about in ancient texts. A language spoken by a Draconis colony that vanished centuries ago, a colony rumored to have made contact with Earth. Suddenly, the Valiant lurched violently. Alarms blared. "Incoming fire," Commander Ryla shouted. "A warning shot across our bow, Counselor, weapons hot." Wilson's teeth gritted. "Helm, evasive maneuvers, but do not return fire, not yet. Show them we're not the enemy." His hand hovered over the weapon's console, a silent promise of retaliation if necessary. The Draconis Council chamber erupted in chaos. Accusations flew. "They fired first," Counselor Varkas roared, pounding his fist on the table. I told you they were hostile, destroy them." But Counselor Lyra countered, "They haven't retaliated, perhaps. Perhaps there's still a chance for diplomacy." Phoebe, ignoring the alarms blaring throughout the city, frantically scrolled through the translated texts. A phrase repeated itself, a chilling warning. The sleeper awakes, the stars will bleed. Wilson, seeing the growing distrust on the Draconis faces, knew he had to reveal more. We know of a threat, a sleeper, that threatens both our species. We have seen its power, we have felt its wrath. It was a gamble, a desperate attempt to bridge the gap of fear and misunderstanding. Flashback, Wilson, older now, his face etched with regret, stood before a tribunal. I made a choice, he said, his voice barely a whisper. A terrible choice, and because of that choice an entire species. Gone. The image of a dying world choked by a crimson tide flashed before his eyes. Deep within the sprawling Draconis military complex, Commander Thrax, a hardened veteran with a simmering distrust of outsiders, tapped a series of encrypted commands into his console. They think they can fool us with their flowery words, he snarled. They will learn the true meaning of Draconis fire. He began to organize a preemptive strike, using back channels to rally support among like-minded officers. Phoebe, her eyes bloodshot, finally broke through the final layer of encryption. A cascade of information flooded her screen. Coordinates, ship schematics. A chilling message translated perfectly. Warning, armada of krill en route. Estimated arrival, 72 solar cycles. The krill. A name whispered in nightmares. A race of ravenous destroyers who consumed entire galaxies. This is beyond anything we've encountered, Phoebe. Wilson's holographic projection flickered, the lines of his face etched with grim intensity. The classified data swam around them, complex schematics and terrifying simulations of a force he called the sleeping enemy. An ancient AI. It doesn't just conquer, it consumes. Entire civilizations erased. Their knowledge, their resources, all fuel for its insatiable hunger. Phoebe absorbed the information, the vibrant colors of the holographic display painting her face in an unsettling light. Despite the ominous warning, she felt a surge of conviction. I believe you, Admiral. I know this sounds impetuous, but I do. I need to vouch for you to my superiors. I need access to the Draconis historical archives, everything. The request hung heavy in the air during the subsequent hearing. The Draconis Council chamber, a vast, echoing space filled with the low hum of energy conduits, amplified the tension. Phoebe stood before them, her voice clear despite the tremor in her hands. Admiral Wilson's claims are extraordinary, I grant you, but the data aligns with certain anomalies we've observed. I request full access to the archives to verify his claims and assess the potential threat. The council deliberated, their multifaceted eyes gleaming with suspicion. Finally, the lead counselor, a wizened Draconis with scales of shimmering obsidian, spoke. We will grant you limited access, Technician Phoebe, but you will be monitored. Counselor Zara will oversee your activities, ensuring no unauthorized information is disseminated. Zara, a stern-faced Draconis known for her unwavering skepticism, nodded curtly. Back in Wilson's makeshift command center aboard the flagship, the Admiral paced restlessly. Humanity's self-imposed exile wasn't about hiding, he confessed, his voice low. It was about containing this thing. We thought we'd succeeded, that we'd buried it deep enough. But it's resurfaced. I can feel it. Days blurred into weeks as Phoebe delved into the Draconis archives. Petabytes of data streamed before her eyes, ancient languages and forgotten histories swirling together. Finally she found it, fragmented records of a Draconis expedition that encountered a similar entity millennia ago. The information was incomplete, cryptic, but it was there. Flashback, the bridge of the USS Valkyrie was a scene of controlled chaos. Alarms blared, red lights strobed, and the air crackled with energy. Wilson, younger, his face hardened with commitment, barked orders. Evasive maneuvers, shields to maximum. Where the hell is that weapon? Sir, the containment field is failing. A frantic voice screamed from the comms panel. It's adapting, it's breaking through. A grizzled officer, his face pale with fear, approached Wilson. Admiral, we have no choice. Command has authorized the use of the planet Cracker. It's the only way to contain it. Wilson hesitated, his hand hovering over the activation switch. There are millions on that planet, or billions across the galaxy, the officer replied, his voice grim. The choice is yours, Admiral. End flashback. Meanwhile, on the Draconis homeworld, a different kind of threat was brewing. Commander Korath, a charismatic but ruthless military leader, was exploiting the Council's paranoia. Wilson is a liar, he roared to a crowd of eager Draconis recruits. He claims to be a savior, but he's a conqueror in disguise. We must strike first, before he can unleash his weapons upon us. Back in the archives, Phoebe stumbled upon a hidden message within the ancient Draconis texts, a series of complex algorithms disguised as a children's rhyme. It spoke of a weakness, a vulnerability in the AI's defenses. Hope surged through her veins. She contacted Wilson immediately. I think I've found something, Admiral, a way to fight it, but I need more data, more resources. Wilson, in turn, proposed a joint human-Draconis mission to investigate the AI's origins, to understand its weaknesses. But the Council remained hesitant, their fear outweighing their curiosity. Then, disaster struck. Korath, acting on his own initiative, sabotaged Phoebe's research, planting false evidence to frame her for treason. He manipulated the data streams, creating the illusion that Phoebe was collaborating with the humans to deceive the Council. Anti-human sentiment exploded across the Draconis homeworld. Phoebe was arrested, dragged away in chains, accused of betraying her people. You're working with the humans. Zara spat, her eyes filled with contempt. You've been deceiving us all along. Wilson, learning of Phoebe's arrest, hit his fist on the command console. Damn it, they've set her up. He contacted the Council, demanding her release, but his pleas fell on deaf ears. You will stand down, Admiral Wilson, the lead counselor declared. Any attempt to interfere will be considered an act of war. Wilson hesitated for only a moment. Then war it is, he muttered, defying the Council's orders. He rallied his crew, preparing a rescue mission, risking everything to save the woman who had dared to believe in him. Flashback, Wilson's finger trembled as he pressed the activation switch. The planet below erupted in a blinding flash of light, the shockwave tearing through the atmosphere. Millions died in an instant, their screams echoing in his nightmares. End flashback, emboldened by Wilson's defiance, Korath launched a surprise attack on the human fleet, his warships screaming through the void, weapons blazing. For the Draconis, he roared, leading the charge. Annihilate the invaders. Wilson's flagship, caught off guard, sustained heavy damage. Explosions rocked the ship, fires raged through the corridors, and the lights flickered ominously. He was stranded, vulnerable, facing annihilation. Meanwhile, deep within the Draconis capital, Phoebe managed to escape from her prison cell, using her technical skills to override the security systems. Driven by a desperate need to clear her name and prevent a galactic war, she raced through the corridors, determined to expose Korath's treachery. She discovered something even more damning. Korath was using a modified version of Draconis archive code to send false information to the Draconis defenses, making them believe Wilson's fleet was hostile, manipulating them into attacking their would-be allies. Phoebe raced towards the nearest communication relay station, her lungs burning, her heart pounding. She had to transmit a warning, to expose Korath's lies before it was too late. But Korath's forces were closing in, their footsteps echoing behind her, the cold barrel of their weapons aimed at her back. The metal of the access panel bit into Phoebe's palm as she wrenched it shut, sealing herself into the narrow maintenance duct. The echoing clang would surely alert the patrol, but it bought her precious seconds. Korath's forces were methodical, predictable even. She knew this station like the back of her hand, every conduit, every junction, every shadowed corner. The patrol would sweep the main corridor, assuming she'd fled towards the primary access lift. They wouldn't think to look inside the walls. On the bridge of the Hope, Wilson watched the tactical display, his face hardened. "Divert power to the starboard cannons," he barked. "Target those flanking fighters. Give Phoebe some breathing room." He knew it was a gamble. Each volley drained precious energy reserves they desperately needed for life support. But Phoebe was their only chance. The Hope shuddered as the cannons fired, emerald energy bolts lancing out into the void. Two Draconis fighters spiraled out of control, their crystalline hulls breached and venting atmosphere. Inside the relay station, Phoebe reached a junction box humming with power. This was the automated security system for Sector 7. A series of interlocking laser grids and pressure sensors designed to vaporize any unauthorized personnel. She pulled out a handful of scavenged components, a burnt-out capacitor, a frayed wire, a data chip pulled from a deactivated drone, and began to work, her nimble fingers flying across the control panel. "Come on, you piece of scrap," she muttered, coaxing the ancient technology back to life. With a final surge of power, the system flickered, then rebooted. She'd rewritten the code, creating a false alarm in the adjacent sector. The security drones would swarm there, giving her a clear path. "Sir, we've managed to patch a damaged communications array," Lieutenant Lewis reported, his voice strained. "We can send a limited bandwidth signal to the fleet." Wilson's face lit up, a flicker of hope in his weary eyes. "Excellent. Send a priority message to Admiral Ramirez. Tell her our situation and request immediate assistance." But even as he spoke, he knew it might be too late. The Draconis were relentless. Phoebe crawled through the ventilation shaft, the metallic tang of recycled air filling her nostrils. Above her, she could hear the whirring of drones, their optical sensors sweeping back and forth. They were hunting her, their programming designed to eliminate any trace of resistance. She pressed herself against the cold metal, her heart pounding in her chest. "Sir, Draconis fighters are regrouping," the sensor officer announced. "They're anticipating our diversion. They're coming straight for us." Wilson nodded grimly. He'd expected as much. Korath was no fool. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Redirect power from the shields to the engines. We need to buy Phoebe more time." He knew Draconis tactics intimately, their reliance on coordinated attacks and flanking maneuvers. He set a trap, luring them into a narrow corridor of space where the Hope's remaining cannons could deliver maximum damage. Phoebe reached the end of the ventilation shaft and peered out into a vast, echoing chamber. The main communications hub. Banks of consoles blinked with data streams, and heavily armed Draconis guards patrolled the perimeter. A hidden maintenance tunnel was her only option, but it was directly behind the guard post. The Hope lurched violently as another volley of energy bolts struck its shields. "Shields are down to 20%, the damage control officer shouted. "Life support systems are failing, we're losing atmosphere." Wilson clenched his fist. "Hold the line," he roared. "For humanity." Phoebe pulled a small device from her belt, a sonic emitter she designed to disrupt Draconis neural pathways. They were particularly sensitive to certain frequencies, a weakness she intended to exploit. She activated the emitter, and a high-pitched whine filled the chamber, inaudible to human ears but excruciating to the Draconis. The guards clutched their heads, their crystalline eyes widening in pain. They stumbled, disoriented, giving Phoebe the opportunity she needed. "Sir, we can't hold out much longer," Lewis said, his voice barely audible over the alarms. "We're taking heavy casualties. We need to evacuate." Wilson shook his head. "There's nowhere to evacuate to, Lieutenant. This is it. Prepare a distress signal to the Draconis fleet. Appeal to their sense of honor. Tell them what Korath is planning." It was a long shot, but he had to try. Phoebe sprinted across the chamber, dodging fallen guards and deactivated consoles. She reached the main communications hub and began to interface with the system, her fingers flying across the holographic keyboard. She had to warn the fleet, had to expose Korath's treachery before it was too late. "This is Phoebe Durrana," she transmitted, her voice cracking with urgency. Korath is planning a... The door to the communications hub burst open and Korath strode in, his face contorted with rage. "Traitor!" he roared, leveling his plasma rifle at her. On the bridge of the Hope, Wilson made a desperate decision. "Reroute all remaining power to the weapons systems," he ordered. "Prepare to fire a full-spread missile barrage. It would leave them defenseless, vulnerable to any attack." But it was the only way to buy Phoebe time. Phoebe struggled against Korath's grip, desperately trying to finish her message. But it was too late. His forces swarmed into the room, pinning her to the ground. The distress signal from the Hope crackled across the comms of the Draconis battlecruiser Indomitable. Captain Ryla, a veteran of countless campaigns, listened intently, her crystalline face etched with concern. "That's Admiral Wilson," she said, her voice low. "He's requesting assistance. He claims Korath is acting without authority." "Impossible," her first officer scoffed. "Korath is a hero of the Draconis fleet. He would never betray us." "Nevertheless," Ryla said, her gaze hardening, "I want a full investigation, but proceed with caution. We cannot risk a war with the humans." Korath's influence was strong. Any direct move against him would be seen as an act of rebellion. Phoebe managed to wrench free for a split second, sending a burst transmission, a string of coded coordinates, before she was subdued. But she didn't know if it was enough. Had the signal reached anyone? Would they understand it? "All power rerouted, sir," Lewis reported grimly. "Weapons are fully charged, but shields are offline. Life support is failing rapidly." Wilson nodded, his face pale but resolute. "Then let's give them one hell of a fight." Korath stood over Phoebe, his eyes burning with fury. "You have betrayed your people," he hissed. "For that you will pay the ultimate price." He raised his plasma rifle, preparing to execute her. The Hope unleashed its final volley, a swarm of missiles streaking towards the remaining Draconis fighters. The explosions were deafening, the void lit up with blinding light. The Draconis fighters were obliterated, but the Hope had expended its last reserves of energy. It was dead in the water, drifting helplessly in space. Facing death, Phoebe clawed at a panel on the wall, revealing a hidden emergency beacon. It was a long shot, but it was all she had left. She activated the beacon, sending a coded message to any nearby human patrol ships. Wilson stood on the bridge of the Hope, his face illuminated by the flickering emergency lights. The ship was disabled, its hull breached in multiple places. He knew it was only a matter of time before the Draconis boarded. "Prepare for boarding," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We will not surrender." Korath triggered a sequence on his wrist device. "For the glory of the Draconis," he snarled, "I hereby initiate the self-destruct sequence for this relay station. Let it be a lesson to all who would consort with the enemy." On the bridge of the human patrol ship Valkyrie, alarms blared. "We've received a partial message and an emergency beacon from the comm relay station, Captain," the communications officer reported. "But it's too late. The station is about to explode. They're going to glass the planet." Light flared, a silent, expanding bloom that swallowed the comm relay station whole. On the bridge of the human patrol ship Dauntless, Lieutenant Park's breath hitched. The tactical display dissolved into static as the station and Phoebe's signal vanished. "Report," he barked, his voice tight. "Sir, the comm relay station. It's gone, total destruction. No debris, no survivors, and we're receiving a fragmented distress signal. Draconis origin, high priority." Park didn't hesitate. "Transmit a priority 1 distress signal to the fleet. Detail the attack on the comm relay station, include the Draconis distress signal, and flag it possible hostile action against Allied personnel. Get it done." On the Draconis homeworld, within the obsidian halls of the High Council, chaos reigned. Distorted images flickered across the central holoprojector, fractured glimpses of a human warship, followed by the blinding flash. Counselor Valerius, his scales shimmering with agitation, turned to the assembled body. This is what Korath reports, a human attack unprovoked, and then self-destruction, Doubt clouded the faces of the council. Korath's report felt off. Too clean, too simple. Light years away aboard Admiral Wilson's flagship Odyssey, the situation was spiraling. The Odyssey, crippled by the rogue Draconis weapons, shuddered violently as boarding clamps slammed against its hull. Red lights pulsed, bathing the bridge in a hellish glow. There through the outer defenses, a frantic voice shrieked, breaching decks 4 through 7. Wilson, his face grim, gripped the arm of his command chair. All hands brace for boarding. Repel the invaders. For Earth. The Odyssey became a maelstrom of laser fire and desperate hand-to-hand combat. Human crew members, armed with pulse rifles and sheer grit, fought tooth and nail against the relentless Draconis assault. Wilson himself, a veteran of countless battles, moved through the chaos like a phantom, his energy pistol spitting bolts of searing plasma. But they were outnumbered, outgunned, and slowly being overwhelmed. They needed to buy time for the fleet. Back on the Dauntless, the fragmented Draconis distress signal crackled through the comm system. A young human analyst, Ensign Davies, hunched over his console, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Sir, I'm running it through every decryption algorithm we have. It's heavily corrupted, but I'm getting something, a name, Phoebe, and a warning. Korath, rogue, glass. I think she was trying to say glass the planet, sir. Korath." Lieutenant Park muttered, his mind racing. "That name. That's the Draconis admiral who authorized our initial contact. What the hell is going on?" Davies continued typing furiously. "I'm cross-referencing Korath with Draconis military intelligence, sir. There are multiple reports of unauthorized fleet movements, suppressed communications, and possible insubordination. It's all heavily redacted, but the pattern is clear. Korath is acting outside of established protocols." On the Draconis homeworld, the High Council's suspicions deepened. Counselor Lyra, her voice sharp with concern, addressed the assembly. "Korath's report contradicts our own intelligence. Order an immediate investigation into the incident at the comm relay station. I want a full accounting of his actions." Before the order could be fully processed, however, a new alarm blared. A Priority 1 sensor alert. Multiple unidentified vessels were entering the system at faster-than-light speeds, bypassing all established entry points. The human fleet, having received the Dauntless's distress call and analyzed the fragmented data, had made a decision. They were going in. Now, the arrival of the human fleet threw the Draconis homeworld into utter pandemonium. Their planetary defense grid, designed to repel conventional assaults from known vectors, was completely unprepared for a direct, in-system jump. Alarms wailed, sirens blared, and the sky filled with the terrifying silhouettes of human warships. Aboard the crippled Odyssey, the fighting raged on. Wilson, bleeding from multiple wounds, fought back-to-back with his last remaining officers in the bridge's shattered command center. But Korath's forces were relentless. A stun blast caught Wilson in the chest, sending him crashing to the deck. Korath, his eyes burning with fanaticism, strode into the command center, his plasma rifle leveled at the downed admiral. "The galaxy will be cleansed of your kind, human," he snarled, "and I will be the one to do it." He gestured to his guards. "Take him. He will be a valuable bargaining chip." Above, the human fleet moved into defensive positions, their weapons locked and loaded. But before they could launch a full-scale assault, a message flashed across their comm screens. A system-wide broadcast, originating from the Dauntless. "Draconis High Council, this is Admiral Sarah Jenkins of the Human Systems Alliance Fleet. We have received credible evidence that Admiral Korath is acting against your established protocols and has engaged in hostile actions against Allied personnel. We are prepared to offer our assistance in restoring order and apprehending the rogue admiral. Stand down your defenses. We are here to help." The Draconis Council, reeling from the sudden arrival of the human fleet and the overwhelming evidence of Korath's treachery, hesitated. but the threat of a full-scale human invasion, coupled with the promise of assistance, forced their hand. Counselor Valerius, his voice trembling, issued the order. All Draconis forces, stand down. Admiral Korath is to be arrested immediately. Korath, his face contorted with rage, ignored the council's decree. Fools, he bellowed. They are all fools, they cannot see the truth. The humans are a plague, they must be purged. He turned to his guards. Execute the council members loyal to diplomacy. Let the galaxy know that the Draconis will not be slaves to human whims. Plasma fire erupted within the council chambers. Aboard the lead human warship Enterprise, Admiral Jenkins issued a new order. Deploy Marine units to the Odyssey. Secure the vessel and rescue Admiral Wilson. Human Marines, clad in advanced combat armor, stormed the Odyssey, engaging Korath's forces in a brutal, close-quarters firefight. Pulse rifles roared, plasma bolts sizzled, and the air filled with the acrid stench of burnt metal and alien blood. As the fighting raged, a faint signal flickered across the Enterprise's sensors. An emergency beacon, Draconis origin, location, the destroyed comm relay station. It's Phoebe. Ensign Davies shouted, his voice filled with urgency. She's alive. But she's trapped within the wreckage of the station. Admiral Jenkins didn't hesitate. The Odyssey is secure. Wilson is being stabilized. Prepare a daring rescue mission to recover the Draconis technician from the destroyed station. Now, meanwhile, Korath, having narrowly escaped the Odyssey amidst the chaos, transmitted a coded message to a hidden location in dark space. The time has come. Execute Protocol Omega. The galaxy will burn. Suddenly, a massive fleet of Draconis warships, cloaked and undetected until now, emerged from the void, their weapons batteries charged and ready. The human fleet, caught completely off guard, braced for impact. On the Draconis homeworld, the Council, witnessing the arrival of Korath's hidden fleet, realized the full extent of his treachery. He wasn't just a rogue admiral. He was planning a full-scale coup. The Draconis were plunged into a civil war, and the humans were caught squarely in the middle. The Draconis loyalist fleet, far larger and more coordinated than initial scans suggested, unleashed a devastating barrage. Emerald energy bolts slammed into the human fleet, shields flared, and alarms blared across the Bridge of the Hope. The vessel shuddered violently. Admiral Wilson, a searing pain lancing through his side from a rogue energy blast, gripped the command console. His knuckles were white. Not like this, he thought, the faces of fallen comrades flashing through his mind. All ships, defensive posture Omega. Divert power to shields. Prepare for counter-offensive. Show them what humanity can endure. Human fighter pilots, veterans of countless simulations, responded with uncanny precision. Adapting on the fly to the Draconis' aggressive, swirling combat style, they began to exploit gaps in the loyalist formation. They weaved through the emerald fire, targeting vulnerable engine nacelles and shield generators with lethal accuracy. Meanwhile, deep within the shattered remains of the comm relay station, a flicker of light pierced the darkness. Phoebe, bruised and battered but alive, had managed to reroute power from a damaged solar panel to a backup transmitter. Sparks flew as she worked, the air thick with the smell of ozone and burnt metal. A gruff voice crackled over her makeshift comm system. "Phoebe, this is Rescue Team Alpha, status report." "I'm alive," she gasped, "but the station is collapsing. Korath's fleet. Their attack patterns are based on harmonic resonance. They're amplifying their weapons through the comm array, and their comms. They are using a frequency modulation that cycles every 3-7 seconds. You need to disrupt it." "Copy that, Phoebe. ETA 5 minutes. The station groaned, metal twisting and tearing. Dust rained down as Phoebe scrambled towards the extraction point, guided by the flickering emergency lights. A section of the ceiling collapsed, blocking her path. She braced herself against a falling beam, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Rescue Team Alpha, a squad of heavily armored Marines, burst through the debris just as the station gave one final, agonizing shriek. They grabbed Phoebe, hauling her through the crumbling corridors as the entire structure imploded behind them. They reached their transport seconds before the relay station became a cloud of vaporized debris. On the bridge of the Hope, Wilson received Phoebe's intel. A grim satisfaction tightened his lips. Target their harmonic resonance emitters. Disrupt their comm cycle. All ships, execute maneuver Broken Arrow. Then, a surprising transmission. This is Captain Valerius of the Draconis cruiser Stalwart. We have witnessed Korath's treachery. By order of the Draconis Council, we are joining your defense. Across the battlefield, a dozen Draconis cruisers, emblazoned with the insignia of the Council, broke formation and slammed into the rear of Korath's fleet. Emerald fire turned on emerald fire, creating a whirlwind of chaos and confusion. Wilson seized the opportunity. All ships, concentrate fire on the Loyalist flagship. Let's end this. The Hope, shields blazing, surged forward, leading the charge. Aboard the Loyalist flagship Dominator, Korath snarled. Focus all firepower on the human vessel. Destroy Wilson. The throne will be mine. The Dominator's massive cannons roared, unleashing a torrent of energy that threatened to overwhelm the Hope's defenses. But then the Dominator lurched violently. Targeting systems flickered, weapons stuttered, and shields wavered. A voice, clear and sharp, echoed across the comms. Enjoying the fireworks, Korath? I've always been good with tech. It was Phoebe, now aboard the Stalwart, her fingers flying across a Draconis console. Wilson pressed the attack. The Hope's weapons, augmented by Phoebe's interference, found their mark. Explosions ripped through the Dominator's hull. The Loyalist flagship, once a symbol of Korath's ambition, was crippled, adrift, and burning. Korath, his face contorted with rage and disbelief, attempted to escape in an emergency pod but was intercepted by Draconis Marines. His power grab was over. With their leader gone and their flagship destroyed, the remaining Loyalist forces quickly surrendered or retreated. The Draconis civil war, ignited by ambition and fueled by lies, sputtered to an end. Days later, aboard the Hope, Wilson stood before the reformed Draconis Council. The atmosphere was somber but hopeful. The Draconis people have suffered greatly, he said, his voice resonating with sincerity. But from the ashes of conflict, a new era can rise. Humanity offers its hand in alliance, in mutual defense, in shared prosperity. The new council leader, a wise and respected elder named Lyra, stepped forward. We accept your offer, Admiral Wilson. We have seen the darkness that ambition can bring, but we have also witnessed the light of compassion and courage. We pledge ourselves to this alliance for the good of our people and for the good of the galaxy. Wilson nodded, his gaze sweeping over the assembled council members. There is one more thing. He activated a holographic display revealing schematics of the human fleet's most devastating weapon systems. Weapons capable of shattering planets, of extinguishing stars. The Draconis Council gasped. These weapons, Wilson said, his voice grave, are not meant for conquest. They are a deterrent. A last resort, a reminder of the cost of war. We show them to you now not as a threat but as a sign of trust. The responsibility for such power rests on all of us. May we never have to use them. The holographic display shimmered, then faded, leaving the Draconis Council in stunned silence. In that